Hi everyone, my name is David Ogilvy, and this is the podcast where I explore what it means to live, feel, and work better. The pandemic prompted people to make big life decisions, and many of us are still questioning ourselves. Uncertainty is high, and today's episode focuses on a framework you can use to determine why you might feel the way you feel and what you can do about it. Here goes. The theme for today's podcast is really what we're going to call the 5 R's of change. And kind of, I think the inspiration for this is we are all professional coaches. We all deliver our programs, and we've been doing that week in, week out. And there seems to be a common theme. And that common theme that I keep hearing from people is people are feeling a little bit strange, a little bit uncertain. They're feeling a little bit emotional, and they're not sure why. And not sure why. So I thought what would be great is it'd be good to talk about the thing that immediately came to my head was the 5 R's of change. And I thought it'd be good as a team to talk about that, right? And talk about that. So the first thing for me is to point out that there's a difference between change and transition. So
Yeah.
anyone want to talk about what change is?
Well,
John,
change
how
is
would you-
external. Oh, sorry, I jumped
Yeah.
straight in.
Go for
Typical
it,
of me, isn't it?
Yeah.
Change is external. It can happen very, very quickly. It happens even if you don't agree with it. And you can usually sort of pinpoint the exact moment that change happens. It's sort of done to you by events, by, like new IT systems coming in, changing roles, all that sort of great stuff around there. Transition, on the other hand, is internal. It's more psychological. It usually occurs more at a slower pace as you get to deal with the change that's going on around you. That's how I'd put it.
Yeah, I agree with that. And I think of transition as it kind of has a kind of beginning of an end. You recognize that something's ending. Then there's a middle bit, and that middle bit can be full of emotion and kind of almost angst. But hopefully, where it gets into is a kind of a bit of movement that something's new going to happen, and then you get that new beginning. And that's how I think about transition. So change and transition, two different things. But generally, people don't talk about transition; they talk about change. I've got so much change going on around me, and certainly during the pandemic, I kept hearing people say, we're all in the same boat." And I think when you think about change and transition, we're all on the same sea of change, but we're in very different boats because we're going through different transitions, and those transitions are mental, emotional, and social. And we're not really taught to do with transitions, are we? Not really.
No, and it's really highlighted during COVID. I mean, just hit on a point there, David, that yeah, we all are in the same sea, different boats. COVID was great for some people. Some people had an absolute brilliant time, and they adjusted to working from home really easily, and they thought, that's it, I'm sorted. They didn't think about the transition and the change going back into the workplace as being a whole new change for them as well. So it wasn't that we just had to change with COVID, we then had to change back into a different new normal.
Yeah. And we're constantly transitioning. I think what COVID's done is just amplified it massively. So you've got that kind of unease going along as people are still transitioning. Because as we say, it's internal. It's that kind of psychological process that you go through, and it's different for different people. It's different for different people. I mean, I remember John's done a brilliant podcast and blog for anybody listening about life transitions, and I'd recommend anybody go check that out. And we'll put links in there. I think it was one of our first podcasts, wasn't it, John?
I think it was the first one, yeah. First one up.
Yeah. And so if anybody's interested in kind of transitions, but broadly speaking, for the purpose of this conversation, change external, transition internal, more that psychological piece. But people talk about change, which kind of brings us nicely to the 5 R's and the 5 R's framework, because it's a lovely framework for thinking about those transitions. So I'll start with the first R of the 5 R's because it's probably one of the easiest to explain, although I think they're all straightforward. That first one is it's routines, isn't it? That's the first R of transition. So if we think about all those routines that we normally had pre-COVID, we were getting on modes of transport. We were probably going to that coffee shop, or we were coming into work all at the same time. We had lots of routine, and what that routines give us is lots of certainty. But during change, those routines, they go all over the place. They go absolutely all over the place and start to really have an impact on us. And I'm just wondering if you can hear the siren in the back there coming
We
from
can. There's
my
going to be
microphone.
a huge change for somebody out there.
Yeah, we may be able to get rid of that with the magic of technology. But that's the first R, routines. And when we're going through change, those routines can all go up in the air. And people listening or watching this might want to think about, in terms of their routines now and during the pandemic and after the pandemic, are they the same or are they different? And for a lot of people, just like working from home, it's totally different. Those routines are totally different.
Just to pick up on that point, David, during COVID, I wrote just something on LinkedIn. It was just something that I picked up and put out there, and it got picked up by them. And it was about taking the walk to and from the office and how we could replicate that and having a new walk. So people working from home, going out the front door, walking down the road, coming back in, taking their shoes off, putting their briefcase down or their bags, and then going into the office just to get that old habit into their new routine that was happening. So it's like bringing old routines into the new way of working. But then also remember, when you were going back into work, to take some of the routines that you'd got at home back into the workplace as well, because we like that sense of, security and knowing what's going to happen.
It's certainty, isn't it?
That's the
Certainty,
key, yeah.
And
that's what it's all about, really, isn't it? That's what routines is all about. So the first thing that people notice, really, I think this is the most overt one for most people, because suddenly you're going through change. We've just explained that. It's happened. It's a one-off event. It happens to you. It's the transition that's the problem. It's slow. It's adapting to your new environment. And it's that adapting to these new routines and the removal of the stability, the certainty that you've been used to, that causes that underlying stress. And it's not just COVID. If you're a new parent, you recognize it. It's exacerbated by lack of sleep, but your routine's totally changed. If you're now a leader, that you're now moving from management to leadership, and suddenly you're going into those leadership meetings every Monday morning, Friday afternoon, that's another routine change. It's those underlying changes that causes you that stress, which is what we're exploring here, isn't it? That's that underlying stress caused by a change. It's actually to do with the transition, and the 5 R's help us to understand some of that stress that we get. And one of them is you lose certainty and stability. So you then got to create it again. We will do that naturally, but there are certain things you can do to speed it up.
That was to Louise's point, simply recreating the commute to work. If you're working from home, don't get up in your pajamas, spend the entire day at your desk, and then leave your desk in your pajamas, get up, commute to work, go for a walk, come back. It's certainly something I've had to do. It's definitely something I've had to do because I'm naturally introverted. I prefer my own kind of space, and if I'm not careful, it all blends into one. So just getting up, going out, walking before, walking afterwards. It's a new routine, but it's also recreating an old routine and giving certainty. So that's the first R of the 5 R's framework. Anybody want to talk about the second R?
Yeah, I'll talk about it. So the second R is all to do with our reactions. So naturally, as you can imagine, when you're going through change, when you have that transition, it's psychological, it's mental, emotional, it's social, and that underlying stress can cause our reactions to change. Situations where we expected to respond normally, for instance, if you've just had a newborn child, suddenly you're asked to go and make the tea, you can have an adverse or a very emotional response to that. And those surprising responses can cause people to question themselves. Oh, what's going on here? Why am I responding that way? And it's that confusion, again, lack of stability, lack of certainty, potentially, that then causes that underlying stress. The key is it's recognizing that your reactions will change during periods of change. And that, to some people, can cause stress.
Yeah. And if you're not getting the reactions that... Sorry, John. If you're not getting the reactions that you expect, particularly socially, it can start to undermine your confidence as well.
Yeah, confidence definitely drops with the reactions.
Because you're kind of questioning yourself. Oh, is that me? And it's things like, even if I go out in my community, I still see some people wearing masks, right? And for some people, they will understand that. For other people, they'll get a very different kind of reaction. And again, it's thinking about, because these are not necessarily obvious. So busy working on autopilot that these are the small things. Again, we're used to certain reactions, and suddenly we're getting different reactions. You start to question yourself. You go, "Is it me?"
I
I'll tell
think
you
it's
an
worth
example
saying.
that I had from a client, sorry, was their offices changed, so they suddenly didn't have parking underneath their offices. They suddenly had to park in public car parking spaces, and that was a fight. So they didn't have their guaranteed parking space in the morning, and people were getting hugely emotional about this and going, "What is wrong with me? Why am I suddenly reacting that way?" Well, it's all to do with this. These 5 R's is a great way to explain that. Your reactions change to something that seems so simple. You've got to park somewhere different. But actually, that's what we're talking about. It's that adapting mentally, emotionally, and socially to these situations that can
You
cause
see it with
people that stress.
hot desking as well, John.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. We've kind of got two things in one there, haven't you? Got routines
Yeah.
and reactions. What were you got, Sam?
Well, I think really you're working, when it comes to change, you are working against your biology, because I mean your brain craves certainty, and it's the same way that it craves basic needs like food and sleep. So it craves information which is certain, and if it doesn't get it, then the stress response kicks in, which is fight, flight, or flee, which explains what you were saying, John, you know, about people being really emotional. Some people will be really aggressive, and some people will go into themselves and just think, I can't cope with it, I don't really know what to do, you know. And I suppose it's from our perspective, you know, I was thinking about it in context of families and routines, and you know, when people their children change schools, or perhaps there's fallouts at school, that evening meal, that family meal where it's the same time with the same people, it creates that stability and that sense of belonging, which is a buffer to the stress. And it's just a really easy thing to keep consistent, you know, when things are changing.
Yeah, that's the other thing again, is how we think about creating certainty, keeping some of the routines that we've got. So we've got two there. We've got routines and then reactions. Third one is roles. And roles, right? Roles are really, they're part of our identity, aren't they? So who wants to talk about roles? Anybody?
I'll go. Roles, I mean, as you said, part of our identity, it's who we define ourselves as. Changes that can lead us, it also leads us to start questioning ourselves at a deeper level when our role starts to change. But it's deeper than that. We get stressed out. It doesn't matter if you're being promoted, you're a new employee, you could decide stepping into a different department. Doesn't matter if you're transitioning and going from a parent, becoming a parent is a huge change. Even a student to employee. These are all changes that happen to us. And because we identify ourselves as our roles, what we've got used to doing, what we enjoy doing, as soon as it goes out of that sort of framework, we start to stress out. Even working from home. Working from home is huge, because it means that you're not having to work with other people, which can stress ourselves out. So it all brings us a great deal of uncertainty as to whereabouts we sit, what we're going to be doing. So yeah, roles plays a huge part in it.
Even
this is my personal favourite. I don't know about you, David, but this one is absolutely my personal favourite, because it was the most overt for me. I think most people recognise routines, but this one was for me. Coming out of the military, because when you go into the military, you define yourself by the beret or the cap badge you're wearing. Your values are very much defined for you. You become that identity, become that person. You lose track of who you are. And it's very easy, not just in the military, but in all other parts of our lives, to do exactly the same. I am manager X, Y, and Z at this financial services company. That's who you define yourself by. That's who you are. So as soon as you go through that change and your role changes, and all it takes is a 15% change in your role for you to think completely start to question your identity. Who am I? Who is this person? You know, am I a parent? Am I manager? Am I worker? Am I husband, wife? It all changes suddenly, and it's exactly as you said, Lou. It's that, again, lack of certainty, but lack of understanding and who you are at your core that causes that underlying stress. And any small change could potentially lead to a slight change in role. And the point being, it only takes a small change and a small role change for you to start to question, hang on, who am I? And this all goes on under the surface. These are not necessarily conscious thoughts. So it's definitely
It's a
one I
big
noticed.
transition for, and John, you'll definitely agree with it, and Emma and David, but definitely when you become a parent, all of a sudden your view and everything changes, and how you identified yourself beforehand changes as you now become mother or father to this new thing that's been given to you. I shouldn't call it a thing, but I will. And then it happens again, and I know that I always bleat on menopause. But again, as your children grow and they leave home, you then take on a different identity. I think this is something you were saying earlier on, Emma, when you were talking about children changing schools and you got that family dinner. It can change at home and your roles start changing, and that can lead you to feeling uncertain and stressed at home as well as at work.
I was thinking
do-
about. Sorry, go on, please go on.
You just don't know where you fit in the world. So you've got a sense of loss. But the other thing that perhaps it's worth talking about is, when your kids go to school and you've been at home with them and full time, and then suddenly, you need to go back to work. And, it's a weird thing, because there's lots of people that will say, oh, I feel a sense of loss and I'm going back to work, and, it's really overwhelming. There's a lot of pressure. And then there's other mums that go, thank God for that. Give me responsibility, give me challenge, because a different part of me has been in play when I've been a mum. So that again is roles, it's identity, isn't it?
Yeah,
And very personal.
It's a great example of same change, different transition. Same change, my kids go to school. Different transition. Two people interpreting it very, very differently. And the other thing, as people were talking, I was thinking about roles. Working from home, I mean, that's very topical. Most people will want to work from home. Most people, not everybody. And it's got kind of real benefits from it. If you think about it, when you're working from home, you tend to adopt more roles, don't you? So, if I'm in the office, I'm just David in the office. If I'm working from home, then if I'm not careful, I get constant interruptions. I have to adopt different roles with different people. And, that 15% change, John, it's not just kind of job description. It can just be just in how you perceive yourself. And your identity is strongly linked to purpose and meaning. So it can all start to kind of, there's a theme, isn't there? All these quiet things going on underneath us, causing us uncertainty, causing us stress. And often people think of stress. I always remember you, Lou, saying this in one of the workshops, is if you show somebody a picture or ask somebody to draw a picture of stress, they'd show somebody pulling their hair out. When actually stress is like, it's more of a quiet fizzing feeling underneath, isn't it? It's like shaking up a bottle of Coke.
Or just a tap dripping.
Yeah.
Drip, just a little
It
bit.
builds
drip,
up, doesn't
drip,
it? That's
drip.
the key. It just
And then
builds
it builds up.
Yeah, and you can be at level 1 stress and slowly you climb to level 3, but you don't know you're on level 3 because it's such a climb. You think you're still on level 1. And then you keep climbing to level 5 and you think, oh, I'm still on level 2 now. I'm not level 5, but you don't notice it. Yeah, it's that slow fizz. Yeah, but I think roles is a really important one in big organizational change. It's a big barrier to lots of organizational change, because you do a little, okay, I just tweak this person's role, tweak their responsibilities, and you go, they're still turning up 9 to 5. They're still doing the same technical skills. We've just tweaked what they're doing slightly, but actually underneath, that has a big impact potentially on some people's confidence, self-esteem, their perceived value of themselves, how they then leverage their strengths in a new environment. It's not new, but it is to them.
And again, it links to the other R's, getting different reactions from people, perceived.
Yeah.
It links to the fourth one as well of
Definitely,
relationships. Because I think it's UM that says this: relationships rule the world. I know you're really big on it. All comes down to relationships, and it's often said that the quality of your life can be judged by the quality of your relationships. And then when you get transitions and change, they can affect our relationships in lots of different ways, can't they? You can kind of ostracize people or dismiss them, or good relationships promote kind of confidence, reassurance, and satisfaction.
But also, if you're changing in a role and you're moving to a new department or a new career or a new company, you've lost the relationships that you've left behind. You've got to start again. and that does stress us out. As human
Yeah.
beings, we're pack animals. We like to have people around us that we feel we can trust. They've got our back, and then you've got to start off from the beginning right again, and it can be a very stressful event. Very stressful event.
We're pack animals, aren't we? At heart, we're pack animals.
Mm.
And as we know, as soon as stress starts to creep in, stress has a negative impact on performance, well-being, but also the way you connect with people. So you get that comfort and security through close connections. And as soon as stress starts to creep in, well, actually that removes your ability to be able to do that. And that's the big part of change, isn't it? But I think we've kind of touched on one of the most important elements of this relationship role in what we've said before, and that's everyone sees change very, very differently. So you might be working in a team and you get a change, and actually two people have their roles completely flipped upside down. So they're really feeling that. They're feeling that. And you haven't changed at all. None of your roles have changed. So actually you're feeling really good about things, but they're really, really stressed. Suddenly that's going to massively negatively impact your relationships.
Yeah. Did you want to say something?
Well, yeah, I think, when anybody is wanting to introduce any level of change, we need to look at certainty, but also relationships. And I think that gets forgotten. People think, oh, we can just do this change. If the relationships aren't there, you've basically not got your basic infrastructure. And it's a basic need that we need.
It's obvious, isn't it, when you say it?
And it's
Isn't
the
the
first
most
thing to
challenging- sorry, go on.
deteriorate. Well, it's the first thing to deteriorate, isn't it? When you're stressed, or there's that, extreme, like you said, John, if some people got, oh, this is brilliant, positive stress, motivation, can see the progress, and others will shut down, it's overwhelming. How do you bring those two people together, or those two groups of people together, so that they can actually work together and give each other what they need,
I mean, let's face it, nobody likes being the new kid at school. Go back to your school days. Nobody liked being the new kid in the school.
Well, some
And it's
people do, though.
No, and sometimes that carries through into adult life of going, I'm the new kid in this room. And I was just about to say, some people thrive on it. New change, they like it, and they're going to meet new people. Other people just go into themselves. And I think a lot with the change and the transition, the 5 Rs, it's very individual with each people. We're all very same, but different. So, we all approach it slightly differently, but fundamentally, it's right down there.
Yeah, it's interesting. Again, same change, different transition, or, we're not all in the same boat. We're all in the same sea of change, but different boats. John, you look like you want to say something.
Yeah, it's just one more thing with relationships, and that is that you think when you're going through change, you think it's those relationships and the connections that you have with people that are sort of on the outside, on the periphery, people you kind of have an okay relationship with that suffers. It's not. That's the point of 5 Rs. It's recognizing, understanding that even the strongest of relationships you have can really struggle when you go through change and transition. I think the biggest pinch point, isn't it, for marriage, is when a child comes into it. That's when the relationship suffers the most. So it's not just about it's not just about the lack of relationships or striving to find new relationships. It's change will impact even those strongest of relationships. I say change, the transition, because it's mental, emotional, and the key for relationships is it's social.
Yeah.
It affects you there.
Yeah. I was just thinking that when we explain what we do and we say to people that we come along and we teach you mental and emotional skills, thinking, cognition skills and emotion skills, people go, yeah, okay, yeah, I get that, right? And then you go, but also we're teaching you social skills. You go, what's that got to do with resilience? But of course, it's everything to do with resilience, because it's about you and your environment and the people around you. Because there are the 4. We've covered 4. We're getting to my favorite, which is why I'm going to move us on. Routines, reactions, roles, relationships. Those are the first 4. The 5th one is reflections, and it's reflections about ourselves. So if your routines are up in the air, if you're getting reactions from people that you didn't quite expect because we're going through change, if your roles are a little bit undefined at the moment and your relationships are all a little bit frayed, you can start to reflect on yourself. Why am I doing this? Do I really want to be here? And I think we'd all probably agree that, first lockdown, Everybody thought, oh, this is brilliant. I can spend so much time at home with the family and my loved ones. Second lockdown, different, wasn't it? It's like, what am I doing here? And the amount of people I've coached and still coaching that have really, as a direct result of the pandemic, started to think, do I really want to do this anymore? Don't know if anybody's got anything to add on that.
All I was going to say is it's amazing how many people that we coach that actually you spend so much time looking at their strengths, their values, their purpose, their meaning. And it's just interesting, isn't it? Because when you go through change, it is that, how do I view myself here? And a lot of time you're coaching people, it's because either a change is needed, it's coming, it's wanted. And you have to spend so much time on how people perceive themselves, that self-reflection, because it's such a key part. And all of the other 4 R's are heavily involved in that 5th one.
Yeah, you start to, sorry, David, you start to question what is important to you. And I think, I mean, we keep harping on about COVID, but any change, you can sort of start to internalize and you change the way that you see yourself, and you can start questioning it a little bit more. And, you know, as you say, they all blend into each other, but then you can start to experience this range of emotions about your new environment, its effect that it has on you. Do you really want to be here? Do you really want to keep pushing forward? You know, is this really what you want? Have I made the right choice? Some of those questions that just come to the forefront.
It's interesting because we've mentioned the pandemic, we've mentioned COVID, and for us in our roles, we tend to be working now with organizations and people that perhaps, I'm not saying COVID is behind, but we've moved much further forward in that transition. And there are people who've been listening to this podcast or watching it, and COVID will still be very, very, very real for them. Some people may even be in what we would consider to be lockdown conditions. So the same change, the pandemic. But I think the pandemic has amplified all of this. And really, it hasn't really gone away. We are still dealing with the consequences of pandemic. In the UK, throwing things like Brexit, throwing a new government, we're going through so much change and transition. I think it naturally leads you to start to question all of this stuff without really realizing that all of this stuff is going on in the background, which kind of brings it full circle, because you kind of go, okay, if I was listening to this, I would go, okay, I get these 5 R's of transition. I get that change is different to transition, but so what? What do I do about it? What do I do about it? And I suppose the challenge for the team is, the answer is, oh, well, of course, join one of our resilience programs or come and work with us, right? But you know, if we want to give somebody something to take away now that they could do with themselves or their family or their teams, what would we say to them? What would you say, John?
I think we've already picked up on it quite a bit. We've mentioned that word. They're probably bored of it by now, but it's stability and certainty. So if you're there with a family, look, everybody's a leader, so it doesn't matter if you've got the title or not. Everybody within every team, every family, you're all leaders. So if you are part of that team, part of that family, you want to be creating certainty. And even if you can't create certainty, you can remove uncertainty. There are certain things you could do to remove uncertainty, and I think that's what people should be looking to do.
Like what? So, for example, I would encourage people to think about those 5 R's and go, which ones have I got certainty or uncertainty in?
So you can define people's roles, can't you? You can be very very clear on that. You can treat each transition you go through almost like a new hire. Sit people down, talk them through. This is exactly what I expect of you. Understand that it may take them a little bit of time to adapt to that, but I'm here to support you. And over the next few months, we'll get you to where you need to go. That's one of the first things. Routines, you can create certainty over that by just defining the routine up front. Be very, very careful that you not keep switching routines every now and then. That can play havoc on people. So if you create a routine, stick to it, and only change it if you absolutely need to. There's a couple of things. Don't know if anyone else wants to jump in before I waffle on.
Yeah, for me, I mean, just to reiterate with John, maintain old routines where possible, no matter how small. Something very small can still give you that stability. If you're a leader, try and resist the urge to micromanage people, changing lots and lots of little things the whole time. On reactions, remember to focus on your strengths. Talk about what bothers you. sort of communicate your needs a lot of the time. Make sure that you are being vocal and don't keep it all blocked up inside. As far as role goes, John said, make sure you get clarity. Focus on what is changing, but within your role, it doesn't just identify you. It's just a title. Relationships, build them. I mean, I'm definitely there with them. But relationships rule the world. Doesn't matter what you're doing, you need to be building relationships with people. So keep communicating. And if you talk about reflections for me, I would turn around and go, just accept you can't control everything. Yeah, some things will happen. You just have to go along with it. And that it's quite normal sometimes. Just reassure each other it's quite normal if you're getting these emotions coming through. There's some of the tips I would give.
Yeah. You got anything to add, Em? Looking thoughtful there, or are you just thinking?
I think as well, it's hard because the tendency is that leaders feel they have to have answers, and the people that are in the teams feel that leaders should have answers. And so it requires honesty and a bit of being human because, I think from an empathy point of view, just being honest and understanding that everybody goes through change differently and responds differently. Some are really excited. And as a leader, you're probably thinking, oh, great, this person's the sort of person I want on my team. And then there's those that are slower and perhaps are getting a bit distressed over it. And, there'll be a lot of people now asking themselves one question, and it's a really concerning one for organisations. And it's where do I belong? And that could be top talent, or it could be somebody that perhaps needs to naturally move. But that's why we've got the great resignation going on now, because there's so many people saying, actually, where do I belong? And do I want to do this anymore? Is the cost outweighing the benefit? And from a purpose and meaning perspective, I'm not buying in anymore. So the way that we deal with change and we respect and embrace psychological transition is key, because without it, people will not want to work in those sorts of environments.
That's what I like about the 5 Rs. It's a nice, simple framework and a nice language that we didn't have before to sit down and go, look, we're all going through change and transition. Here's the 5 Rs of change. Which ones are causing us uncertainty? Because basically what happens during change is the change creeps into our routines, into our reactions, into our relationships, and we're not aware of it. So sitting down and having a conversation around it can create that awareness. And then in order to, if you just have a conversation and create awareness, the danger is that it breeds cynicism. So you have to take action. And that's what I like about this framework. It enables people to take action, to say, well, actually, it's my relationships at the moment that's the most important one. They're a bit all over the place. What can I do? And I just love that framework. And it's worth saying it's not our framework. We need to give the credit to Kate Berardo of Culture Curiosity, who took the framework. Initially, it was about, I think it was US diplomats moving from country to different countries. And they used this framework to really help people, those diplomats, understand the transitions they go to face. But broadly, it translates to me as this, and the theme is this, is there's a difference between change and transition. Transition's a really personal thing. What the 5 Rs allows you to do is explore that and become aware, but also talk to other people and take action on it. And that action is all around creating certainty where there's uncertainty that's crept in, because that uncertainty just causes stress. And that's a fair summary.
Yeah.
It is, yeah. Just going to add one thing.
Go for it, John.
Personal experience. So it's purely personal experience talking. Change is instant. Transition is slow. We've covered that. One of the best things we did in the military was often when we came back from a combat environment, they'd send you out into the real world for a couple of weeks. It's the way we did it. You come back, massive transition, massive transition, operational theatre into normality, into normal civilian world. We didn't talk about it for a couple of weeks because you had to experience the new normal. So yes, talk about it before, bring up the 5 Rs, what could impact us, but it's important to have that conversation after you've gone through that change, because often change happens, we all think that's it, everyone's okay, let's just get on with the new normal. That's not the case. We've covered that. We've got the transition to deal with. So make sure after you've, that point where change happens, that new IT system comes in, you're back in the office, you're leaving the office, you're in a new role, whatever it might be, 2 weeks, 3 weeks later, get everyone around a table. That's when you can talk about it, because people have started to transition then. So some of these things will be elevated. But we often forget about that because we live at 100 miles an hour and we just go, go, go.
Yeah. Taking that time to stop. So that's the 5 hours of transition. Routines, reactions, roles, relationships, and reflections about ourselves. And my hope is that anybody listening to this or watching this, suddenly they've had a bit of a light bulb moment to go, yeah, that's helped me get under the skin of actually understanding why I feel the way that I feel at the moment. And it's also given them, I hope, a kind of a bit of a roadmap to start to think about how they can make some changes or reintroduce more familiarity back into their life so that they can kind of live better, work better, and feel better. That's, I think, a job done for us today, is it not, Tim?
It is to me.
Tea and biscuits. Yeah.
So I hope you've enjoyed this episode as much as we've enjoyed creating it, and I'd like you to do 2 things. Number 1 is, if you think stress is negatively affecting you in your life, please do get in touch, we can help. And number 2, help us grow. Share this podcast, tell your friends about it, we really would appreciate it.